All set. Good evening. Welcome to Orono's Candidate Night. My name is Dave Chase, and I will be serving as the volunteer moderator for tonight's event. Tonight, we have the opportunity to question the candidates running for 2 3-year seats on the Orono Town Council. The candidate for the RSU 26 Board of Directors, Noah Charney, will not be in attendance tonight because he is running unopposed. So in this session, you'll hear from 3 candidates running for these 2 seats on the council, and they are Andrea Hardison, Colleen Marzilli, and John Quinn. Andrea and John are with us here in the chamber. Colleen is hopefully going to be able to participate by Zoom. We did have her online a few minutes ago, but as things happen from time to time, had a little bit of a glitch, so hopefully she'll be able to join us shortly. So as we go through and tonight's session, those of you that are participating at home by Zoom are encouraged to use the question and answer function to ask questions of the candidates. Which we'll get to as times allow. So there's a format that we will be following. A timer will be used to time the candidate's opening statements and their responses to the questions. Each candidate will have the opportunity to give a 2-minute opening statement, and then the order of the candidates has been chosen by random draw. We'll start with Andrea first with regard to opening statements. We'll hear from John, and then if we can bring Colleen in, we'll have her go third. After the opening statements are complete, I'll open the question and answer segment, and during that segment, each candidate will be allowed up to a 3-minute response. For those of you that are participating by Zoom and submitting your questions by Q&A, if you would, please state the question as briefly as you can and avoid the long statements if possible. Though there are those of all of us, I believe, that can hold strong positions on many different issues. But if you would, please limiting your questions to the candidates rather than making statements about particular opinions that you might have on a particular issue. The questions can be directed to a particular candidate or to the candidates at large, but each candidate will be given the opportunity to respond to every question that's asked. As always, we've never had a problem with this. I wouldn't expect to have a problem now, but we expect a civil and respectful session certainly without personal attacks or campaigning for specific candidates by the public. We'd ask that also refrain from expressions or approval or disapproval. We don't want anybody being booed for an answer that they give or loud cheers, but we do thank you for participating tonight. We're glad that you're here, and we look forward to learning more about the candidates and their positions. So we plan to, depending on the questions that we have, we'll plan to wrap up no later than 7 o'clock, and so we'll get to all the questions that we can during that time period. So again, as a reminder, there are 2 seats open on the council. And we have the 3 people running for these 2 3-year terms. So we will start with Andrea Hardison to begin with in the opening statements. Andrea?
Thank you. Thank you for being here, everyone, and for those who are watching. My name is Andrea Hardison. I am a resident of Orono. I've been since 1997, a little bit earlier if we count the college years. My daughter went through the school system, and my husband is an employee of the town of Orono for the fire department. I ran a year ago with my own impression of this is my turn to give back to my community as a way also to make sure that the residents were receiving services that they needed, keep the tax payments, tax bills in check, and see how the process goes. Sometimes it does seem like the wheels move a little slowly. And I have learned a lot in this last year on how decisions are made, how everything works. I've had an opportunity to learn the budget, see how the departments work with the administration and with council. And I'm so very proud of the work that we did during the budget season. And I'm also proud of the work that we did to bring back the Orono Festival Days and can't wait to see that take place again next year. Um, I'd like to see in the next year that we make progress as far as housing, attainable housing for residents here in Orono, keep improving the community relations between neighbors, make sure that the funds that were assigned in the budget are appropriated correctly. There are a lot of things I'd like to be a part of, and I might not always have the right words. I might not always have the words, but I do have the willingness to learn and to listen and to work through questions, answers, problems, and keep Orono moving forward.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from John Quinn.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here and participating in this process. It's I think it's a powerful one to be able to come in and I have some understanding of kind of the scope that the town council operates under, and that it doesn't necessarily do it all the time, but I think we have such a great opportunity at this level to really be engaged in that process. And I'm really looking forward to being further engaged in that process. My partner Lauren and I live on Mill Street with our two boys, Arlo and Stuart, who are just getting into the school system in first grade and kindergarten, or in pre-K. They're over at soccer right now. So fully, as much as we can, taking advantage of some of those opportunities. We chose to live in Orono over a decade ago now because of the community and the schools, the walkable neighborhoods, the access to recreation and the university. And I'm running in part to help ensure that those opportunities that we've had and we've been able to take advantage of continue to be there and continue to grow in a sustainable and an equitable way. My priorities are where I tend to get excited about um, policy and the function of town government are really around housing, around strengthening walkability and alternative transportation, and protecting the services and recreation and connectivity that make Orono so special. My background is in social work, and I hope that that's provided me with some tools to identify and understand some of the challenges that we face and some of the strengths that we have, and really move forward with those into the future. So I'm looking forward to continuing that work and playing what role I can in that.
Great. Thank you, John. I don't think we've been able to hook up with Colleen yet. So if we are able to, we'll certainly bring her in at that point. So we'll jump right to the questions then. Andrea, we'll start with, and I think you've talked about this certainly in your opening statement a little bit, but what motivated you to run for the council, and what personal, professional, and/or educational experiences would you bring that would benefit the residents of Orono were you to continue to serve on the council?
I had chosen to run a year ago. It was an opportunity for me to give back to my community. I was interested in making sure that the residents had the services that they deserved, that they needed, and also ensuring that our employees had the staffing, the equipment, and the training that they needed to provide what residents deserve for services. I bring with me I have a banking history, but I bring with me more my desire to see our community grow, our community continue to bring in attainable housing, bring in business, um, lost for words. But I really have learned that also you don't have to be a part of a committee to participate. You can show up to meetings, you can go out and speak to residents, you can make yourself available to speak to residents and speak to the town leadership. And I hope to be able to continue to do that. And I think that's all.
Great, thank you. John, would you like, I'd repeat it so a little bit, your motivation for council and the personal, and you touched upon it as well in your opening, but the personal, professional, or educational experiences that you think the town can benefit from.
Yeah, thank you. So certainly, as I said, I think there's a strong value of mine has always been in service, in that idea that we all kind of work together towards shared and common goals. And I think that participating in this process is a way that I can kind of continue that value. And at the same time, work towards growing and strengthening our community and the community that I live in and the community that I'm hoping my kids are going to grow up in and want to stick around in. I think something that has both gotten me excited towards working on the council, but also something that that I'd like to prioritize. Well, I will come back to the priorities. I'm sure we're going to talk about that later. A background that I do come from a background in social work. I have a private practice just behind us here. It's a one-man show, but it does provide me that opportunity to kind of connect with people in a variety of different ways, and keep my finger on the pulse of like the mental health needs of our community. And the social work background also really focuses on a assessment and intervention and evaluation model. That idea of kind of at a variety of levels, from that individual that I do in my office to communities and organizations, and even at the policy level. So I come with some training in that realm of assessing what's working, assessing what needs are. I've been lucky to be able to participate in some community needs assessments in some previous work to assess where those needs really lie, and then have a moral and an ethical framework, both from my personal values, but also my professional training to help with the decision making around those interventions, and as well as the follow up afterwards of, are the decisions we're making having the outcomes that we want them to have. So I'm hoping to be able to apply some of that here at that policy and that we call it the kind of a macro level, but also at the individual level, and just being able to connect and hear what people's needs are, and work within my scope to be able to meet them.
Thank you, John. So you're right. The next question will be a priority type question. I'll go to Andrea first on this one. It's the question says top three, but that might be a hard one to do. But for priority wise, what do you consider to be the top fiscal priorities for the town in the coming year, recognizing that we all would like to have things and benefits that to make the town better for us and a better place to live, but there's no free lunch. And there are certain things that have to be done no matter what. And so from your perspective, where do you see those priorities?
I think we have a fiscal responsibility of bringing in businesses, supporting the businesses that we have, and supporting the small business owners that are in town. I'd like to see that we can grow our tax base. I think we have a responsibility too of properly maintaining town equipment, town buildings, town property, what do we have on our rolls? What should we be doing with those? Um, and I think too, we have a responsibility to our employees, making sure that they have the training that they need, that they have their own services that they need, and that they're providing the services that we need as well. I think we also have a responsibility of making sure that our budget remains in check so that Orono is also an affordable place to live.
Okay. And just to follow up on that, you had mentioned in your opening statement about keeping the tax bills in check as one of the things that you saw to be important. How do you do that? How do you?
That's a very good question, and I am still learning to answer that myself, from going through the budget. And one thing I learned, it's one thing, and our department heads worked really hard and did a really good job giving us their best budget. And I learned that it's not enough to just say, I want a percentage taken off, I want a dollar amount taken off. You really need to look through the budget line by line and see where the funds are being spent and make sure that the funds are being spent on the things that we need. Right now, it's a need versus want era for us. So that's what I look at. I run my household, and what do I need? What do I want? And I think that that's what the town officials should also be doing is what does our town need? What is our versus what our town wants? And if we can meet some of those wants, then we should try and do that.
Thank you. So John, your fiscal priorities as you see them.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would just kind of compliment, echo, reflect on that idea of the budget process this year and having kind of watched that externally, that Andrea and the council kind of navigated that, I think, in a efficient and thoughtful way. And I think continuing that is really important to ensure that the spending that is happening is, again, kind of coming back to that like evidence base, that it's going where it's supposed to go and it's like having a measurable impact, that we are thoughtful in the dollars spent, that there's a return on them. The additionally, I think part of lowering that tax burden is that expansion of the tax base, being able to bring in businesses. When I was trying to find an office in Orono, it took years, not months, to find a good fit, and find an office space where I was able to open, my one person and occasionally a student intern business. And that was a big barrier for me. And, I prioritize being in Orono for my client base and for the ability to bike to work and be working close to where my kids went to school. But that was a barrier that I had to navigate. And I think incentivizing businesses to be in this area, but also creating the spaces where that can happen is going to be a really important part. And I think it's something that's reflected in the comprehensive planning process that the town's been going through over this last year. I also want to emphasize that a lot of the things that make Orono a attractive community and a community that we all want to spend time in, that we all care enough about to be here tonight, is a result of the way those dollars are spent. And I never want to be in a position, and I will advocate for that position, that short-term cuts at the expense of kind of the long-term benefits that we that make the town what it is, would be harmful, would be something that I would avoid.
Thank you. So I see that we've been able to bring Colleen in. So that's happy to see that. Colleen, we'll go to you. We haven't gotten too far into the questions, but would like to hear from you on your opening statement. We had allotted 2 minutes. I'm going to give you a little more time because maybe in because I think that was done in some of the opening statement as well, but if you could include in your opening statement your motivation for the council, that was one of the questions, and the personal, professional, or educational experiences that you have that you think would be of benefit to the town should you be able to serve on the council. So thanks for being persistent and joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do apologize for not being there in person. I am on a medical mission trip in Peru, and our transportation was delayed because we had a sick patient that we were trying to get to the emergency room. So I do apologize. Thank you for letting me join late. So I'm Colleen Marzelli. I am first and foremost a mom of 4 kids, one at the University of Maine and 2 at Asa Adams and 1 at Orono Middle School. I am a proud resident of Orono, Maine for starting my 3rd year on August 1st of this year. I am from Texas. And work brought me here. My husband's work brought us here. But I am a nurse practitioner. I teach nursing, and I also work as a nurse practitioner at an urgent care in the Bangor area. And one of the reasons why I want to run for town council is because I love Orono. When I am sitting at the football field and I look down in the valley and I just see how beautiful it is, I sometimes question whether this is actually a real place because it just seems so picturesque. And being someone that's new to Orono, I am grateful to be a resident and very proud of the town and all that has accomplished. I see that with the university that is here, with bringing Tyler Technologies, their new building. There's a lot that's going on in Orono, and there's a lot of civic engagement with the Arts Festival, and just a really great community. And it's a wonderful place, and I want to be part of that. I have served on a hospital board as a board member in Texas prior to moving here. I also serve as executive director for the Nurses Professional Association in Maine, American Nurses Association Maine. So I do have not only the healthcare background, but also a business background as well that I think is something that's really important. Certainly the health of our town is very important. Health is one of those things that is so important to everybody, from cradle to grave. It does not matter where people come from. Health is one of those vitally important issues. And also being aware of fiscal responsibility and making sure that the town has the monetary resources that it needs, and that it's able to manage those in a way that we are good stewards of that money. I think Orono is doing a great job, and I want to be part of that. And I think that is probably my 2 minutes. So thank you.
Good, thank you. So go to the next question. We'll start with John. And so what I think has been mentioned a couple of times, and I think is on a lot of our minds, was the touching upon affordable housing. So not only is the cost of purchasing a home gone out of sight lately, with interest rates not coming down very quickly, but also noting that the cost of renting has seemed to skyrocket over the past several years. What are your thoughts on how we go about addressing encouraging people to move here and providing affordable places for people to live? If you have thoughts on that.
I certainly do. Thank you. Yeah, my wife and I were incredibly lucky to get into Orono in 2016 in the midst of a sell-off of rental properties. Somebody shut down their portfolio, and they were kind of flooded the house with some fixer-uppers. And we were lucky to kind of break into the Orono housing market that way. And then when we moved to Mill Street, we did so on a 24-hour, like it hit the market and we had an offer in and it was like done. So have like lived that experience recently of like what it is to try to get into this community that we value so much. Uh, Additionally, we have in-laws that we would love to be in this community close to their grandkids, but also is like a great place to be in their retirement. They see that value. We have friends that would love to move to this area. I know, and that housing is often a barrier. Um, I think development, and I think again, kind of coming back to that comprehensive plan, which has been such a major focus of the town over the last year, really starts to highlight some of that, where we have areas of growth, areas that are kind of keyed up for that growth, areas where there's opportunities for development. But I think prioritizing working through ordinance and really kind of working within that comprehensive plan is important. I also think incentivizing that infill development, those opportunities where we have properties that are and have been vacant, are run down, are not necessarily in line with the way we want our communities to look. And that when there's opportunities to support folks in revitalizing and returning those to a state where we're able to not just expand the housing stock, but improve the housing stock. I think a focus on making things better and not necessarily just bigger is really important. I think it's really important that when we're looking at what that growth looks like as we enact the comprehensive plan, that it's not sprawl for the sake of sprawl, but intentional and thoughtful and aligned with those goals of bringing people into our community. I'm running out of time here, but I also think it's really important that we maintain the diversity of our neighborhoods. I think that neighborhoods as a monoculture is like, it's just one thing, are really harmful and have negative long-term effects. And bringing in that diversity and providing opportunities across the lifespan to engage with living here and being parts of our community is really important.
I'll have Andrea go next on that and how we address that affordable issue. And one of the things John touched on was incentivizing and how we might do that.
I was glad to hear you say about helping to revitalize. We had a potluck supper and our town manager, Clint Shane, had come to it and said, write down what your dream would be if you had unlimited budget. And one of mine was a chance to be able to help homeowners bring their homes up to code, comfort, efficiency. So that's one of my dream budget things. But I agree with the incentivizing landlords to make their homes affordable to tenants. I'm also a big fan of tiny homes. I think it's a great way for families to start their lives, great starter home. It's affordable. It's also a great way for people to end their home ownership. Downsizing is a big thing. And I think if we had areas that included neighborhoods with homes, neighborhoods with housing complexes, not just for students or transient residents, but also long-term residents, that would be a great thing to have. How to do that, I'm not sure. The market is what the market is, but if we can find a way to work with property owners and also for the town to work with the property that is on the town rolls, there should be enough ideas on how to bring that around.
Colleen, if you would give us your thoughts on how we might address that very difficult problem of affordable housing.
Yeah, absolutely. And since I moved here in 2022, I know firsthand how difficult it is to find a house in Orono. So I think this is a very important issue. And I think first and foremost, we need to engage the public. We need to engage the town in how can the town help meet the needs of the community? And we do that by listening first and foremost. We also need to use smart growth principles. Smart growth principles include things like prioritizing cost-effective building, as well as making sure that we're using density and scale to reduce overall housing costs, as well as minimize infrastructure strain. I think that one thing that we do need to consider is looking at things like incentives for developers. Incentives were mentioned earlier, but I think offering incentives such as dedicating land at below market price to developers who commit to including affordable housing units with their projects is something that does need to be looked at carefully. And when I say carefully, I do mean carefully, and that is looking at the comprehensive needs of the community with the town plan that the town council has been working on. I think another way that we can do that is commercial space conversion. Um, are there any are there any commercial buildings that aren't being used? Can they be rezoned so that they can be converted into housing? And what would that look like? I think another opportunity that we should consider and look at is public-private partnerships. I have seen this work well in small communities, and with public-private partnerships, you want to ensure that we're partnering with experienced developers that are collaborative in the process, and are able to use those public-private partnerships through strategic planning to ensure that underutilized land or other assets are able to be converted into affordable housing and housing for the community that meets the needs, which does include students. I think something else that should be considered is looking at uh, it's a tough market for grants right now, but are there state and federal grants that we can apply for when we're looking at ways to develop the infrastructure in the town to support additional housing, and what that would look like? And one of the ways that we can ensure that things are being done in an efficient manner is to use competition, and to have bids where people are able to highlight how they see their vision looking for Orno, and if that fits with our town council and with our town as a whole. And so I think those are some great strategies to pursue as we're looking to make housing an important priority for Orno.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my next question, but as I do, uh, if anybody in the audience here has a question, feel free to put your hand up, and because you don't have the Zoom ability here to pose the question. So if you do, just let me know. I think Andrea's next on the first. Um, at the risk of that maybe this answer is already, the question's already been taken care of, but one of the things that a lot of towns seem to be struggling with is balancing Airbnb and rental properties, that as people want to find a way to pay for their housing, they'll use Airbnb or some or all of their home, balanced against the idea that it also tends to drive up rents. And maybe the council has already addressed this, but it's something that I was wondering about.
Yes, and that's a good place where our comprehensive planning can come into, our ordinances. We, our council chair came up with the idea for the Good Neighbor Committee and ensuring that we don't have disorderly properties, that we have some responsible landlords, responsible people living there. That as compared to Airbnbs, that is still a responsibility of landlords of who is renting the home. But the as far as the controlling the rental costs of rent and how that is used, the zoning for single family, multifamily, commercial is something that can be looked at through the ordinances.
Colleen, I think you'd be up next for that. Your thoughts on balancing the benefits for individuals for Airbnb, but also against the costs that it might lead to on rents and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly there's a need for Airbnbs in Orono with the school here and parents coming to see their students. Um, the house that I live in was an Airbnb before at some point before we bought it. And so I do know that that is a concern. It is a source of income for many residents in Orono. And so we have to look at that from a 20,000-foot level, balancing things like permits with occupancy limits. We also need to consider rental day restrictions, which can be used to limit the total number of days a property can be rented out to guests on a short-term basis each year without a specific permit for it to be an Airbnb. And we can also look at zoning reforms, like was mentioned previously. When we talk about Airbnbs and we talk about the mix of affordable housing and the need for housing in the Orono area, we do want to have at its core the idea of being a good neighbor. And so there was a lot of work done on that last a few months ago, and we want to make sure that we continue that. But Airbnbs can be a form of revenue for the town. But we have to balance that with the need for affordable housing, and we need to look at things like directing a portion of short-term rental revenue towards initiatives that will support affordable housing initiatives in Orono. We can also look at Airbnbs as a way to reinvest in the community. And what I mean by that is encouraging short-term rental hosts to reinvest their profits back into the town. Certainly, we have some amazing residents of our town that have Airbnbs, and as I mentioned, that's an important part of their income every year, and they rely on that. And we don't want to penalize them, but we do need to look at this in a way that is balancing the needs of the town as a whole. And again, we want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that engages the community. We want to make sure that this is done in a sustainable manner while looking at things like economic growth and ensuring that we do have that housing for our residents here. Because as a town, in addition to health, which I mentioned earlier, you have to have housing, and that's an important part of what it means to live in Orono, is to have a safe place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, my belief is that it's really important to distinguish housing as something that our town has from investment, and that when those things overlap, when housing is turned into investment portfolios, that there's a really negative impact on our communities and there's a negative impact on the people that live in that housing. I think rental properties play a hugely important role in like the diversity and the accessibility of our communities. I think they add a lot of value to our communities. But when we look at things like full-time, short-term rentals, where there isn't a live-in component, that negatively impacts things when you don't have neighbors. Renters, full-time renters, college students, folks that are maybe just in our community for a year or two. They're still neighbors and they're still people that we can have a strong connection with and build community with. But when we have accessible housing in our community, housing in our community that is being converted, I think that extracts the value of that housing. That extracts value from our community, financial value from our community, but it also extracts the sense of community and the togetherness and in that shared place. So I think finding a way to limit and which I know there's been a couple of different approaches taken around the state, particularly in places where there's uh, uh, a lot of tourism and traffic and things along those lines. But there have been steps taken, effective steps taken to limit the impact of short-term rentals, and I would be very supportive of through ordinance and through communication with neighborhoods to put those in place and maintain that sense of community in a more complete way.
Thank you, John. So, Colleen, I think you're up first on this next one. The question is your vision for economic growth for Orono? And when I asked that question, when I saw that question, I thought, well, there can't be a town in the entire United States that says, well, we're not interested in economic growth or encouraging businesses to come to our town. So everybody's doing it. Every single town's doing it. So what are your thoughts on how we do that in Orono, balanced against what, you want it to be a positive growth, but also recognizing, I'll hear business owners say sometimes it's like, oh, now they want me to do this and they want me to do that. And I need so many parking spaces and I need to put in so many plants and it's driving the cost up remarkably. So how do we do that? How do we encourage businesses to come in when we're doing it against every other town that's out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly, there's a lot of competition for businesses, and I have seen towns do that very well, and I have seen towns do that in a manner that's more mediocre. And I think the important thing to look at when we're talking about economic growth and how to attract businesses to Orono is to look at the resources that we have in the community and look at the resources that we don't have in the community and specifically target resources that we don't. And that creates an opportunity for businesses to not have a competitive environment. And when they have less competition or no competition, we call this a blue ocean because there's no other sharks in the water that they're trying to compete with. It makes sense from a business perspective if they have enough customers in the area. And I think with Orono that we do have the potential with the school, with our location off the interstate, with our proximity to the greater Bangor area, that we are able to leverage that location, leverage our strengths that we have, and attract those businesses that might have a more competitive challenge in another area where they are competing. Incentives are very important, and we want to make sure that we are looking at that closely as we are moving forward in our plans to grow our town. And incentives can be used in a very positive manner to attract those businesses. And we also want to make sure that we are welcoming businesses because you're right, we don't want to make it so difficult for businesses, any parking spots they have and have artificial barriers for them to be successful and be able to open their business. I think there's an opportunity for other businesses to come to Orono as well. Certainly with Tyler Technologies, we can attract other industries to Orono that would bring revenue to the town and help with our overall town outlook. Thank you.
Thank you. John, you're next on this one.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think kind of two paths towards this. I think we have businesses, and then we have the buildings that businesses exist within. And I think that those are kind of two paths that we can take towards this, which is incentivizing businesses to want to be here in Orono, which I think there's a lot of benefits and positives, and I think part of that falls in line with some of the other things we've been talking about, where uh, housing and the walkability and the access to transportation provide, you know, more feet on the street in places where businesses want to be. And I think that can be something, as we continue to grow these things, we have opportunities to incentivize businesses to come in that way. And I also think, you know, working with property owners, working with folks that maybe have those, whether it's on a very small scale or a very large scale, have those empty spaces that are actively shopping for businesses to be in them. Those places where we have the for lease signs out, that we're working and partnering with those businesses to find out what their needs are, to find out what barriers might be to filling those spaces, and are there places where the town can partner, connect, or work with them to alleviate some of those barriers.
Andrea?
I think when we talk about incentives, there's a balance between giving enough incentives to bring the businesses in without jeopardizing the tax base and giving things away too much. I think Orono has a great location as far as we've got the Bangor Brewer Old Town Circle around us. A lot of people from the north travel down to do shopping, go to shows, sports. And I think a lot of people travel north to the Bangor area. And I think Orono is a great location that would provide a business enough diversity to bring them in. I think one of the key things too is to look at what do we have for empty buildings that could be used. It's awful to see a business come in, build a great big building, and then they're gone, and we've got an empty building sitting there. So we want to make sure too that we have businesses coming in with longevity that aren't just going to change the landscape of Orono and then disappear.
I'm going to have at least one more, but I'm going to shorten the time a little bit on that one, maybe a minute and a half or so. I think I remember asking a question like this in the past, which is probably a hard one to answer. It was touched upon in some of these answers about one, that we do have a number of positives here in the town with the location and the student population as potential consumers, and one of a library and so many things. But what are the resources maybe that we're lacking that need to be addressed that would make the town more attractive? Or I think the way I put it last time was, what are we not doing right that might need to be, that we could address? Andrea, Andrea, I think you're next.
It's hard to think of what we're not doing right. I think we've got a very forward-thinking town manager. We've got a very forward-thinking council. So it's hard to say what are we not doing right. I think what we could do in addition to is perhaps look at healthcare, areas where healthcare businesses could come into the town, healthcare plazas. I think too, developers we need to make it more accessible for developers to come in with projects and plans, which is, we have the planning board and the Orono Economic Development Committee, and everybody works together. And I think I just go back to, it's hard to see what we're not doing right, because we are trying to move forward and look at what we are doing right.
I knew I phrased that the wrong way when I said things we're not doing right, and should have focused on that. What are the resources that we're lacking? But I mean, you addressed the question well, but it was my phrasing that made it a hard one to answer. Colleen, I think you touched on that in yours about identifying resources that we maybe don't have or not a strength. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean,
Colleen, you
that's
can go.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, that's a great question. We always want to look at not only what we're doing right, but what we can be doing better. And making sure that we have a town that provides the residents of Orono with all that they need. Recognizing that um, is something that in a town of our size, we're talking about basic needs, and one of those needs is healthcare, and we do have a lack of that here in Orono. I would like to see us pursue that because it is a real need for our residents here in Orono. I think that we need to look at other opportunities for us as we consider um, with our comprehensive plan, um, with the listening sessions that were done for the comprehensive plan, it's important to understand how our residents in Orono are perceiving what they have and what they don't have and what they want and what would be sort of nice to have, right? So there's a difference between what they want and need versus what would be sort of nice to have, um, and pursuing opportunities for us as a town to do that. That was 2 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Um, John, your thoughts?
Yeah. So a couple of things that I was quickly jotting down here, because this is a tough one to identify those things that like maybe we're not doing well. But I think a place for growth might be that interconnectivity of neighborhoods. I think there can be in Orono some siloing within neighborhoods and kind of some feelings of different needs for different places. And I think in the interest of kind of strengthening community, there's benefit to bringing connection. And I think events like our Orono Community Days, things like that, really do go a long way towards that. And so hoping to kind of continue that as well. I through the comprehensive planning meetings, heard a lot and was a voice myself for the expansion of bikeable and walkable neighborhoods. And I think as good as we do that here, there's room for improvement, and is something that I think contributes to a lot of the bigger picture goals that we have. And this one's a little personal. Cup of coffee before 8 o'clock downtown. Um, but I think that's it.
Thank you. So, boy, that hour went pretty fast, and I want to give time for people to give their closing statement. We're going to do it for a minute, please, on your closing statement. So I think Colleen will start with you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and the opportunity to run for town council. Certainly, it's an honor to be a resident here, and it's an honor to be part of what it means to be a good citizen in Orono and to step up when the call is placed for people to run for town council. As I mentioned earlier, I love Orono. I am very grateful to be here. I have big ideas, and I'm a great listener. And that's something that's so important, is to make sure that our townspeople are listened to, and that their needs are represented. Certainly, we have an incredible town. We have amazing things that we have accomplished. We have amazing community connection. We have amazing diversity in our town that I'm very proud of. And I would love the honor and the opportunity to serve on town council. So thank you very much.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, thank you all for being here and being part of this process. And folks that are tuning in online or checking this later, thank you again for participating. I think that's so important. I think we have a really exciting period of time over these next 3 years for really looking at where we want the town to go. And I just reflect that idea of being there to listen, being there to hear the concerns, hear the things people are excited about, hear the things that folks are looking to have included as part of their community, and the things they change, and to translate that and implement that into whatever progress we can make here. I think there's, as Andrea was saying, there's parts of local government that grind along real slow, and then there's moments where we can make change and meet people's needs, and want to be effective in that. So yeah, thank you all for being here.
Andrea.
Thank you. Um, it would be easy for me to sit here and say again, want to watch the budget, town growth and whatnot. But I think one of the key responsibilities that we have is community outreach. And it's not just Central Orono. We have outlying neighborhoods. We have a variety of ages, classes, jobs. And I think it's important that everybody is able to feel heard. Everybody has somebody to contact and ask for different or more from its town. And community outreach is important to making sure that people are heard. And as I said before, I don't always have all of the words, the correct words, but I want to learn and I want to listen and I want to do what's best for Orono.
Thank you. So that brings us pretty much to a close. Thank you all for participating, those that came out in public and those that were able to participate by Zoom in this annual Candidate Night Forum. We have, I think, a great pool of candidates looking to serve our community. And I think that's important for all of us to recognize. I think it's a thankless job. It's a hard job. It's many hours in the middle of the winter with a lot of issues that don't have easy answers. Trying to represent a huge diversity of interests. And to do that voluntarily is a great service. So thank you all for your willingness to serve in that role. And good luck to you. Now, for those three, remember, if you do put up signs announcing the candidacy, state law requires that you put your name and contact information on them. And for the rest of us, please don't forget to vote. There's the most, probably the most important thing to take away from this. All part of maintaining democracy. You got to get out there and vote. The election day is November 4th, with polls open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Collins Center for the Arts at the university. Absentee ballots are available now. Check out the town website at www.orno.org for more information about how to get your absentee ballot or to register to vote. Tonight's meeting video will be posted on the town's YouTube channel for those who couldn't attend or watch the live stream or for whatever reason want to see it again. Voters can also find the bios or statements provided by the candidates posted on the town's website. And again, thank you all for participating and have a good night.